Newsreader Fiona Bruce was just 28, and a junior reporter at the BBC when she covered one of the most horrific stories of her career, the murder of Rachel Nicholl, the mother stabbed to death on Wimbledon Common in front of her son in 1992. And one memory of that case has lived with Fiona, and sickened her, ever since, the moment a callous police officer threw a pile of photos across the desk showing her Rachel's mutilated body. Fiona, 53, says, "It was the only case in which I have been shown photographs of the body. Why the police officer showed them to me, I'll never know. He shouldn't have. It was a terrible violation of Rachel Nicholl's privacy and utterly disrespectful. He threw them across a desk at me and 20 or 30 photos fanned out. This was a young woman who had been stabbed 49 times, so, short of closing my eyes, I couldn't not see them. I have never forgotten them. I felt very shocked and hugely saddened by them." Mum Rachel Nicholl died at just 23. Image, Mirrorpics. In an ITV documentary Tomorrow Night, Fiona looks back on the case and the mistakes made by police during the investigation. She says, "I covered the case on and off over the years and happened to be there when Robert Napper was finally convicted of Rachel's murder. So I felt, at a distance, I had followed the case from the beginning to the end, so I wanted to go back and look at where it had gone so wrong." Rachel, 23, and her son Alexander, 2, were walking their dog Molly when the attack happened. Rachel's son was found clinging to his mother's body, crying, "Wake up, Mummy." The murder shocked the nation and left Rachel's partner, Alex's dad Andre Hanscombe, utterly heartbroken. Rachel, Andre and Alex. Image, PA. It was the first murder Fiona had covered, and she recalls, "It was a case that shocked me in the way it shocked everybody. She was a young woman with her toddler, that was what set this case apart, and on Wimbledon Common, you would think that is the safest place in the world. The police couldn't understand how no one saw what had happened. But somehow Napper got her to a point where there were enough trees so they couldn't quite be seen." Alex today. Image, Rex features, "He murdered her very quickly. He could only have taken 50 minutes from when he got onto the common to when he left, and no one saw it. There was this beautiful young woman with her toddler and their pet dog and a brutal murder. All murders are brutal, but she was stabbed 49 times in front of her child and the killer disappeared into thin air. No DNA they could trace in 1992. It was like he seemed to vanish. Police were up against it from the start as tip-offs from the public poured in. A Crime Watch appeal only increased the workload. The hunt for Rachel's killer became one of Britain's biggest murder inquiries, with 4,563 statements taken and more than 6,000 suspects considered for elimination. It would be 16 years before the murderer Robert Napper was found guilty, but first police focused their attention on Colin Stagg. Acquitted Colin Stagg at the Old Bailey in 1994. Image, Daily Mirror. He recalls, "I was living a boring life. I was unemployed. But that changed when a photo fit appeared on Crime Watch." Colin says, "I didn't think it looked like me at all, but apparently a lot of people around here thought it did. I was watching TV and the next thing I knew the police came rushing and saying they were arresting me for the Rachel Nicholl murder. I just remember thinking, you're joking." The police put 2 and 2 together and got 10. Profiler Paul Britton suggested the killer had similarities with Colin Stagg, and the Met thought they had their man. They spent months on a honey trap operation, using an undercover detective, known as Lizzie James, to encourage Colin Stagg to confess by instigating an exchange about his violent sexual fantasies. Crucially, however, he never confessed. Convicted Robert Napper. Image, PA. After a year in prison, the case against Colin was thrown out, but despite the acquittal his reputation was ruined, making him unemployable and a national hate figure for years afterwards. He later received more than £700,000 in compensation, and Fiona says, "How can you not have sympathy for a man who was very nearly sent down for life for a murder he didn't commit? When he was acquitted he was treated as if he was guilty for years. He was unemployable. The Colin I have met now is a completely different person from the monster portrayed at the time as getting away with murder. He is remarkably unbitter, he is happy and is in a stable relationship and has a job and is looking forward." Fiona discussing the case with Colin Stagg. Fiona thinks police were so intent on proving Colin was guilty, they missed chances to catch the real culprit. She says the pressure on them led them to explore an area like psychological profiling, which was a very new tool used by the FBI and glamorized in movies and TV series, that were pretty untested at the time. They decided to use that and place undue emphasis on it. They recognize now it is something they got wrong. Napper was finally convicted in 2008. After killing Rachel, he had killed Samantha Bissett, 27, and her daughter Jasmine, 4, in 1993. He was also convicted of 2 rapes. Fiona says the evidence that he had committed the crimes was there. His mother had rang the police saying, "I think my son has committed a rape." At least twice he didn't turn up to have DNA taken. That wasn't followed up. That failure on the police's part had disastrous consequences. Napper, 52, is remanded in Broadmoor Hospital indefinitely. And Fiona concludes lessons have been learned from the Nickel case. She says the collapse of that trial against Colin Stagg, that changed policing forever. Rachel Nickel, The Untold Story, ITV, tomorrow night, 9 p.m.